David George here. Welcome to another episode of the Practical Filmmaker. Got a Gear and Gadgets episode for you today. I'm going to be taking a look at the Nanlux Evoke 1200. It's an LED, daylight balanced. It's bigger than an Aperture 600D, smaller probably than an M18. Let's take a look. Okay, so I've got here set up an M18. This is an industry workhorse. Arri has been making this light for I don't know, I'd have to check and see exactly how long. I feel like it's been maybe a decade or something like that. It's not exactly a new kid on the block, but it's a modern lensless par. And it uses 1800 watts, which means that it can run on a standard 20 amp circuit. So it's kind of the biggest HMI light you can use without some more robust power solution than you would get with house power. You know, it's a conventional setup where you've got a ballast, you've got a head cable, and you've got the actual unit itself. This is the Nanlux Evoke 1200. It is a Fresnel, where this is lensless. This is a Fresnel. It's got this huge adjusting ring here to flood and spot the fixture, but it also has a ballast, head cable, and head. This is a 1200 watt LED light. 1200 watts is a lot for an LED. So let's go ahead and see if we can fire these things up. The ballast is really just a transformer on this. So it's just got a power switch on the ballast down there. So I've got power to the fixture now. Now you're gonna see right away one of the things that makes this different than the M18 is that it is dimmable from 0 to 100%. So there's 100%. Obviously on a camera it's hard to get an idea of absolute value, but you know, I can dim it from 0 up to 100. And of course my camera is auto exposing, so it's hard to see exactly the difference. This is just daylight. It doesn't have any green magenta or full color or tungsten or anything like that, much like the M18, which is also just daylight. But I think it's fair to say this is probably more consistently accurate to daylight, where an HMI is going to have some variance with age of the lamp, and you know, that's why when you use HMIs, you have to bring minus green with you to correct out a green cast that may happen. Also, when you dim an HMI, yes, you can dim an HMI. A lot of them have ballasts that are dimmable. You know, I've got a dimming control here. I'll turn this light on in a minute, but it's only about a one-stop dim. So by comparison, it's a very subtle amount of control that you have. Also, HMI has to strike and warm up, and it takes time to do that. And with this, I can literally just dim it to nothing, and then I could bring it straight back up. With this, it would take time to do that, and it would also put wear on the bulb. I think the bulb for this M18 probably is close to $500. I'm gonna go ahead and warm the thing up, turn the dimming up to full, and strike the unit. It looks like it was off at the head, so let's go ahead and turn it on here. Should get it to, there it goes. You know, HMIs are interesting. They're a more primitive technology. They're cool though. I still love them. Both HMIs and LEDs are pretty efficient, way more efficient than tungsten. There is a quality to HMI light that still feels a bit unique. Yeah, and you can see as my camera's panning around, that definitely has some brightness. Let me pan this over here. Maybe I can get the two beams to kind of line up with each other. So I'm gonna pan this guy in, bring that up to full. I mean, the beam qualities are very different straight out of the box. The M18 is more, it was spotted in all the way, you know. So here's that big rotating ring that floods and spots. Yeah, you can see this is spotting in now on the cart over there. If I slide it out. Now I've got a pretty big beam. It is pretty neat to see this thing work. The whole back of the unit slides in and out. The M18, just to my eye, looking at it, still seems pretty noticeably brighter. This is not a technical test. I'm not putting a meter out there, but just standing next to the units and looking at them, the M18 feels like it's carrying quite a bit more speed than the Nanlux 1200. Totally subjective. It's also bluer. I don't have a meter with me right now, but my guess is that the Nanlux is probably more accurate to 5600 Kelvin, and that the M18 is probably running a little higher than that, maybe 6000 Kelvin. Again, these are guesses. There's full dim and full up, full dim and full up. So yes, it does dim some. Not a ton, but it does some. So it does have, if you have you could put a cable in, or a wireless receiver you could put there. And that would give you the ability to do a few things with this. It would give you the ability to turn it on and off and do the dimming. I think at a minimum it would allow you to do those things. I just had one of these controlled wirelessly for DMX recently, and it was kind of cool to have control, but one stop feels a little underwhelming. One stop of dimming ability feels a little underwhelming. One of the things that's super cool about this is that it has actually wireless, it has a lumen radio. So the reason that matters to me is because lumen radios that's how I do wireless lighting control generally. And sometimes I have to put a little radio on the light, but a lot of these newer lights just have lumen radios built in. And that makes it super easy and nice to control these. Recently, I was on set. We did a shoot with this light where you're using it as a bounce off an ultra bounce, and there was a lighting cue where it transitioned from like a conventional daylight interior to like a TV set. And this was one of the main ambient lights that was being used for bounce. And I could take it to 0% and back to 100% just with the click of a button on my console as part of a bigger cue that was controlling a bunch of other lights. And a light like the M18, it just wouldn't have done that. It just wouldn't have worked. Let's talk about price for a second. As of this morning, this light was selling for, with the ballast and everything, was selling for just shy of $15,000. The Nanlux, just the LED head itself, is $3,350 from B&H. If you get it including the Fresnel and the flight case, I think it's about $4,750. It's you know, about 4.5. This one is about 4.5 times the cost of this one. You know, I think there's still a world where M18s are useful and exist, but man, this Nanlux 1200, it is a pretty impressive performer. You might compare it also to a like an Aperture 600D or something like that, which is half the power. It's very similar, but I would say there are a few key differences. This one only works with this Fresnel. It's fully integrated. It's always a Fresnel, whereas like the 600D, it has the Bowens mount that you can put different attachments on. So that's a difference. But a big difference for me anyway is that this has the lumen radio built in, which makes it a lot more usable on a professional set for me. If I use the 600D, I have to put my own radio on it. And then the 600Ds are a little cranky with DMX for some reason. And this thing worked like a charm. So pretty neat little unit. Build quality of the ballast and everything feels real solid. The fixture feels just okay, I would say. The movement of this Fresnel is very nice and smooth, but the head is very, where the yoke is positioned, a lot of the weight of this is out in front, and so you kind of got to be careful when you pick this thing up because it's very front heavy. Also make sure that the yoke brake is tight because it will dramatically tilt forward if you're not paying attention. And if you compare that to the M18, you can see that it's actually much more thoughtfully designed in that regard, I would say. The M18 is pretty much aluminum, whereas the Nanlux uses a lot of plastic just to put your hands on it. It feels cheaper. I'm not saying that the build quality isn't there, but it definitely feels like a cheaper fixture. But it's pretty cool. It does some neat stuff. It's definitely a more technologically advanced solution. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Gear and Gadgets on the Practical Filmmaker. Hopefully that gives you a few insights onto the Nanlux Evoke 1200. Drop us a line, ask us some questions, and we'll do our best to follow up if there's anything we can do.